Hi everyone, and welcome to today's session. My name is Loredana. I'll be your host today for this onboarding checklist session. This is all about the setup of the finance module, which will get your school Sentral ready to use and apply what you've already learned in the past 6 education or learning sessions. If you would like to access any of the previous learning sessions, please refer to previous communication as a link would have been sent by email through, and you would be able to have the individual links to the other 6 sessions. Let's look at what we're going to cover today, but first, quickly, a couple of housekeeping items. The running time for this session will be about 30 to 45 minutes, of course, depending on how many questions there might be. And just a quick reminder that if you are joining us live, there is a question session tomorrow. So feel free, it's a full day session. Feel free to pop in and ask your questions as you are perhaps completing the finance setup and you're ready to do the first transactions in Sentral Finance. Last but not least, this particular link hosts all the Sentral Finance resources that you can refer back to, and that would include also useful resources that relate to both the parent portal setup as well as the activities module, just in case you are not familiar or if you haven't used these 2 modules before. Also, a quick reminder that there is a wealth of help documentation available in our help center in Sentral. So as you click on Sentral help button, we do have everything that's related to finance module in addition to what we already provide around the other modules. So you can access quick reference guides, the finance user guide for those of you that prefer a full kind of manual, frequently asked questions that we keep updating based on the various tranches of schools, questions that are posed to us, as well as YouTube videos that we keep on adding to. Of course, you have the option to lodge a case via the Help Center in a similar manner to what you're doing currently for any of the other modules, as well as I said, the Sentral Finance resource link, YouTube videos, as well as, last but not least, if you prefer more of a specific support to what your school encounters and your situation, there is a dedicated support line, 1-800-998-538, option number 2. Before we cover all those items in the checklist that are available for you to kind of go step by step through, just wanted to clarify quickly for just a couple of minutes that the source of truth that you're perhaps all familiar with, the department database is that source of truth when it comes to the date of birth, name, address of students, all the student details, the contact 1 and contact 2 and their details, so like your email and telephone number, the financially responsible that comes from EARN, that trickles again from the department databases, EARN or EBS, as well as EBS is providing us that allocation of a student or teacher to a class, so that role class. And probably this is nothing new for those of you that are already familiar with the source of truth. Now, when it comes to having access to the finance module, we need to remember we do get details from your SAP, your SAP system. And in particular, the chart of accounts, the tax rates, the fee groups and categories. And just remember that the SAP information is what we call the source of truth for anything that's finance specific and related. So The update with SAP, it's still done automatically overnight via the central data layer that integrates with data that comes from Earn and EBS. So that's nothing has changed there. And also you will have the options that we actually highlighted in those learning sessions, the option of updating manually and synchronizing manually, either with SAP in the finance module or straight from Earn if there are any sort of changes that happened there. And something else that's very important, but perhaps you all know by now, the data that comes from SAP is actually for the last 7 years. So this data, once you access from today, so once you complete the setup, you'll have full access to the finance module, and you will notice that you have the last 7 years that are migrated from Cash Desk. Just briefly, as I do assume a lot of you already understand that relationship of a user level administrator and access and permissions of that particular level. When it comes to finance, based on the requirements from the department, administrator by default is assigned to the SAM, and coordinator is assigned to a sale or a front office admin staff. For anything that you would like to adjust, that's also possible. And all you have to do is to access the settings of Sentral and manage users, find that particular user or particular staff member in the front office that you would like to adjust the user level for, and do so via the access button. Of course, if you look at manage permissions, you will be able to drop down the finance module and see what a coordinator versus what an administrator can do. And of course, apply the necessary changes if they are required. So just for a quick view of those levels and permissions, under manage permissions, you will see when it comes to finance, you've got coordinator, executive, and administrators that can do everything. So these permissions have been pre-configured for you. However, if changes are required, you can alter those permissions further down the line. Now let's look at the checklist we're going to cover today, and I'm going to use a demo site just to replicate those steps. The idea is that you obviously learned on how to use the various menu items and what you can use the finance module for. However, the session today is going to complete and help you do and complete the setup of the finance module. So by now, your EBS4 cash desk data has been imported into Central Finance. Cash desk, as you know, it no longer works for your school. And this checklist allows you to review the imported data. And as I said, especially it's good to just have a quick look, especially as there's 7 years worth of data that have been transferred from Cash Desk into Central. So the first step would look at reviewing the Cash Desk import summary. So let's see how that would look on your side once you log into Central for the first time, into your school Central. So I'm going to use this demo site, and I hope you can see it on your side. And when you log into the finance module, just clicking on the waffle icon, navigating here to finance, it will take you, so we will not be able to use the module. It will take you to the checklist. So this will allow you to complete that checklist. The first step here is reviewing EBS Cash Desk import summary. So this compares the data that's been exported with the data that has been imported into Sentral. So just for you to actually review, just click on this particular link. And that will take you to a summary of student fees, sundry fees, transactions, all the fees in advance that are coming over, and overpaid fees. Now, what I would recommend here is not to spend hours and hours going through all those CSV files. I would definitely recommend looking just at those anomalies and actually see if they are anomalies that need to be either addressed, discussed, or fixed in any way. A lot of schools would have noticed that maybe some of the anomalies they encountered date back to 2018, 2017. So you just have to perhaps have that internal conversation as to what do you need to do with those particular student fees that maybe were carried over from that 2017, 2018. So I would invite you to just look at those anomalies reports. And once that is completed, come here and just tick this button to move on to the next step. Let's look at, so we compared the data and just checked the anomalies report. The next step is reviewing the fee structure. So the previous fee structure has been imported from Cash Desk. And all you have to do here is check against the structure, kind of having 2023 tasks in mind, just to kind of see if the fee structure lines up with what you're going to issue this year, and also more importantly in 2024. So let's have a quick look here at our second step, which is reviewing the fee structure. So if we look here at the fee structure, you will notice that you would have one category called New South Wales Finance. And we obviously don't integrate in our demo side with SAP, but you'll have over 100, let's say, linked fees. I think it's about 120 something, if I remember correctly, from the other schools. And all you have to do here is just at a glance, view these fees and have a look and make sure that they all have an account number according to your chart of accounts. And also have a look and see if they are relevant for this year and especially next year. What we've noticed with a lot of schools is that not everything is relevant. So if you identify those categories that you would like perhaps to hide, you can do so in bulk. So let's say maybe you've repeated and you might have something that's called 2022 voluntary contribution and 2021 voluntary contribution. All you have to do is name those categories in a more generic way. So our recommendation would be to not necessarily assign a year, because you are able to edit the amount every year if you need to do so. And obviously, creating a new category every year would be something that you don't need to do in Sentral. Appreciate you had to do that before, but we recommend in Sentral to keep those categories quite generic. Of course, if you have year one different to year two because they're different amounts, that's not a problem. However, make sure you don't label them with the respective year where you raise the fees, because then it's easier to carry over that category from one year to another. And all you have to do is amend the amount. So for those fees that you don't need to use going forward, you can perform either a bulk action, or you can go and select the fees you don't need and go here under actions and hide in finance. And of course, this kind of just tidies up that fee structure. Having the option here always to go into that particular fee and edit and adjust the amount if that changes. Let's say next year, if that changes, you'll be able to just go and adjust the amount. And whenever you run a billing run or a standalone fee that will pick the assigned correct amount. The fact that you've hidden the fees, to see all the fees, you'll just be able to tick this button, which will display all fees, both the hidden ones. As I said, spend perhaps, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes here just looking at what are those fees that you actually do not need going forward. Because as we transfer the last 7 years worth of data, you'll probably have categories that you might not necessarily need. So once you're happy with, you've adjusted the right amount and you're happy with the accounts, just one quick note here, what we observed with other schools, that category of miscellaneous, you have a different account for GST and without GST. So just make sure that you assign the right account. And as I said, our recommendation here would be to generically label the categories just to make your job a little bit easier in the following years. Once you're happy with that, we can tick that step as well and move on. Of course, if that's something that changes or you observe that needs to be addressed further down the line when you issue fees, you can always come back to the fee structure. It will be available in the setup. So going here, we have cover all these steps. Let's look at the next step where we review the fee types. Fee types meaning any sort of fees that you usually raise would be voluntary contribution or anything that would feed into your fee structure. Just remember these fees are imported from SAP as well, and you'd be able to go and check the fees that are already available in your School Central in the Finance module by clicking on this little link here. These fees can be used to determine which fees should be included in a billing run, right? So these are the fees that will come up in the billing run that will allow you to do that bulk raising of fees. So you might have fees that are like, the voluntary contribution that are once-off. So this is where you would define or check the fees that are coming up and that are applied to students in your school. So as you can see here, if I want to edit, I can add fee types if I have additional fees that I need to raise via the billing run going forward. But at the moment, just have a look at what has been transferred and migrated from Cash Desk and make sure that you are happy with those fees. Once you check those, all you have to do is tick, and obviously that will complete the third step. Let's look at the discount types. Now, each discount, I'd like to note that although we imported from Cash Desk some data, we've created some discount types. I'd like you to know that each discount needs to be linked to one or more fee type before you actually use it in a billing run. So by clicking on these discount types, you will need to see if you have any discount types that were populated, or if when you go forward and you would like to create a particular discount rate that works hand in hand with the flags, you just need to add a discount category. Now, some of those discounts categories that we've noticed, having worked with other schools that have already migrated and using the finance module in Sentral, would be, let's say, a hardship discount. So let's have a quick look here and see. You see, this is a hardship discount. It's applied to the fee types that we already created and are called voluntary contributions. Again, it does depend on the policy and internal processes of your school. But these discounts can be either flag-based discount, or they can be sibling discount. So the hardship discount in this particular case is a flag-based discount, so we need to make sure we have that particular flag, and we can apply it just to anyone that has a hardship discount, or if it's a combination of flags. Let's look at a sibling discount rate. We've encountered a lot of schools that have a sibling discount rate. So if we look here at the rules, the sibling discount rate tells us, so let's edit this, it tells us that's applicable to all the school years. This rate is applied as a percentage, so you have the option of applying the discount either as a percentage or as a fixed rate. And just remember, this is a discount. So 0%, it means that you've got a full fee for the first sibling. As it comes to the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth sibling, so for the subsequent siblings, you will have a discount that increases from 20 to 100% for the sixth child. And as I said, you could set them up as either percentage or as fixed ones. So this was a percent. This was a flag-based discount. And let's look at this one that we've encountered as well in some schools, like a tech levy for just K to 4. So when we define the fee type assigned to is the school levy, so obviously make sure that the fee type exists and it's created here if you have this particular tech levy. And when it comes to looking at the discount rules, you can view the discount rules, and these discount rules are applied just to school years K to 4. And again, it can be applied as a percentage or as a fixed rate. So in this particular scenario, which we again encountered in a real school, the tech levy only applies to the first sibling. So then for any students at your school that have no siblings, they pay 100%, so the discount is 0, but it's only the first sibling that pays. For the rest would be 100% discount. Just remember that if you have, for example, in this scenario, for students that, for families that have maybe more than 5 kids, let's say they have 6 kids, you could always add just to make sure that that's applied as well. And that's pretty much it in terms of the discount rates. You just need to create in the future. If you're not happy with just, or if what you have already created, it's not sufficient, feel free to go and add discount categories here. We've reviewed the discount types and we can make adjustments. Something that I haven't mentioned here actually are the flags. So the flags, you can obviously, if you apply a discount as a sibling discount, you can already apply there on the discount rates. But if you have any sort of flag-based discounts, we need to make sure we set the flags as well. So you have your hardship discount flag that can be used in the discount rates, or again, based on other use case scenarios we've noticed in schools, like a healthcare card, for example. So if you've got a healthcare card, you have the option of adding different colors if you want to. Or for those schools that have a flag-based discount if they are an overseas student, or for those ones that have a principal exemption. So make sure that you define those flags as well. Again, the discount types and the flags are applicable only for billing runs. So remember, when you raise a fee, you can do it via standalone and also via a billing run. So these are only applicable to billing runs. Just remember that. If you would like more information, feel free to refer back to that recording of the student fees. I think it's our first educational recording. So once we're happy with this, we're just going to confirm and move on to the next step of our checklist, which is setting up the tills. Now, again, we have transferred from Cash Desk all the tills that you would have used in the past 7 years. So some schools will find that they have maybe 10, 12 different tills and they all bear a number. Now, when it comes to those tills that you're not using, so first of all, identify the numbers that are allocated to the tills you are currently using. And for those ones that you're not using, all you have to do is just go and turn them inactive. So if I don't want to have, uh, let's say I have here another till, they usually have a number. If that number is not something that I use currently, then all you have to do is just make sure that you turn that inactive. So inactivate any of the tills you're not using, keep the ones you're using. And another recommendation, if I may, just because sometimes it's very difficult to remember numbers, especially with new staff members, perhaps relabel them as on the location. So it could be one could be with the SAM and one till could be in the front office. Maybe another till is in the library. So again, name them generically. Um, if I may recommend, don't name them with the person's name, just because if that person leaves, then you need to come back and rename it, relabel it, and people get attached to names that they actually remember and they know. So all you have to do is just come in here and relabel. Maybe you have front office, maybe you have two tills or whatever, front office one. So you just adjust the label. And the next step you need to do is to actually assign here a user that can access the till, but also can close the till. So typically here you would have the sale that perhaps uses that front office till, but also you can assign the SAM or another sale that could just close that till and access that till in the front in the sales, first sales absence. So if somebody is sick, you always want to have a bit of a backup just to allow them to close the till. So you can have multiple users accessing that till. That's not a problem. So once you're happy, you have users assigned as well as you have the right names for your tills, you are done. So we'll come back here in the setup checklist and we'll tick this button as well. Next would be your FPOS terminals. Now I appreciate, so you need to set those up as well. I appreciate that there might be schools that don't have an FPOS terminal. If that's the case, you could just tick and move on. However, if you do have an FPOS terminal, make sure that when you edit this one here, make sure that you put the correct terminal ID. So that's going to be useful, especially for those situations where you might add another FPOS terminal. So let's assume you're sometime in the future and you want to add another FPOS terminal. Make sure that you give it a different name. And you type up here the terminal ID as per the machine, just in case you need to identify them. And again, you're done with this step. So I'll just tick this as complete. Now let's look at the banking permissions. Let's go back here actually as well and just make sure that I haven't forgotten anything that's of importance. We talked about the fees, we talked about the discount types, and as I said, it only applies to student billing run only. And we talked about the fact that it can be set up as a percent or a fixed amount, and that you have two types of discounts. Again, you might not need to use both if you don't have those types of discounts in your school. We set up the tills, we turn those ones that are inactive, especially if they're old and you don't need them anymore. And I made those two recommendations, as I said, to label them according to their location. So it's just easier for people to identify them. And of course, don't forget to assign users. We also looked at setting up the FPOS terminals. We added the terminals. We actually added the terminal ID just to differentiate for those situations where you have multiple terminals. And of course, you can add a new one if you're going to add another terminal in the future. Rest assured that both for the tills as well as for the FPOS terminals, there is no validation in the backend. So that allows you to rename those tills or the FPOS terminal, however you want to label them, that's a little bit easier for you to identify internally. The seventh step in today's session is setting up the banking permission. Of course, just refer to your internal procedures and processes when it comes to who signs off, who marks certain batches as checked. It's typically the SAM. However, you just need to make sure that you cross-check that, as well as it relates to the end of day summary, who's approving that and who can close the tills for all users. So going into the banking processes step, we are at the setup banking permissions. We'll click on this link. And this is where you can just assign permissions from a user perspective or who can mark the badge. I said in this particular case, it's usually the SAM. However, if you have somebody else that does it, you could also add. Put the SAM first. If you need to double check, you can always come back and add an additional person. The same here with marking the end of day summary as approved. You could have just a SAM or one or multiple users. And here, when you can close till for all users, it makes sense to assign multiple sales if you have multiple tills, just to have that backup of helping each other in case one SEO is sick or not available on that particular day, or if you have a job share as well. Once you have assigned those users, we are done with the banking permissions as well. So I'll come back here, I'll tick this step and I'll move on. Now, what other permissions we have? Review other permissions. It relates to a couple of options that you have. I do recommend here, leave it as a default as it is at the moment. But when I go to reviewing other permissions, this takes you to that area that I mentioned before. So we've preset everything with the department's recommendations in mind, having administrator assigned to a SAM and having the coordinator access assigned to a SEO. However, if you want to tweak in any shape or form, all you'll have to do is go here in the setup, manage user accounts, manage permissions, drop down the finance module that will refresh everything that's possible to be allowed or restricted for the various user levels. And then once you save, those changes will be automatically applied. So you could always come back here. As I said, by default, I would recommend going forward with what's the default setup, and you could always come back and adjust. So this should not take you longer than a couple of minutes. And there are a couple of other central finance settings. I'll just go in quickly here. Now, again, these ones I would again recommend leaving it by default. We tried to make your life easier and pre-populate with default that will work, and it's based on recommendations from the department. One thing, and you could always come back and adjust. One thing I would recommend though is once you get yourself familiar with having the fees pushed to portal and you've kind of pushed to portal all those old fees, you might want to come in here. So in the finance setup, fees, billings, and invoicing settings. And this particular one I wanted to draw attention to, automatically publish fees to parent portal. So by default, it's on no. However, once you get yourself familiarized and you're comfortable with raising the fees and you're using the parent portal, I would recommend coming back in here and putting it on yes, because that just makes, just a one step shorter process. And once you've done that, just make sure you save, and that change will be applicable from that moment onwards. So not spending much time here on these settings, and we've completed those. And as you can see, we've completed all those steps, and now we have access to the finance module. Now, one step that actually I would still like to draw attention on, and not so much on enabling anything, but from a parent portal perspective, if you already use the parent portal, we would have done that default switch on and allow for payments and invoices to be visible to parents. However, what I would like you to do is to ensure that that's the case. So how do we do that? We go into Portal Console Setup under Access Controls. We look at Parents, and when we look at Manage Parent Portal Access, we just need to make sure that the payments and invoices are enabled. So if I go back in here, I'm going to go to Portal Console, which sits under the School Admin. I'll look at the setup. So as you can see, we've moved away from the finance module for a tick. We come under Setup, Access Controls, Parents, Manage Parent Portal Access. And if we scroll down, we just need to make sure that we have invoices and the to selection for payments switched on, because that will allow your parents to have access to that in the portal. Now, of course, if you don't have access to the portal, then that's a different story. You need to remember this step once you set up the portal console. But for those of you that have been using the portal for permission forms or for not just permission forms, but anything else that you share with the parents, make sure that you have those options enabled. So we've completed that, and just 2 more steps before we are 100% complete. So they're all in all, there are 11 steps. There is also the bulk linking of portal users. Now, the bulk linking, we've actually have assigned a lot of the contacts to portal users by matching their email address. However, we would like you to confirm and check those ones that can't be matched. So where do we do that? Again, this is only applicable if you already are using the portal and if you would like parents to have access to the invoices and to also pay via the portal. This is also important in that. Okay, so I'll go back into finance. It's important, especially for those parents providing that they use the parent portal for those split families. So just to pay attention at this step. So I'll go back into finance. I can use the module now, but I'll go into finance setup again. And this is where you can change any of those steps we've already talked about, your structure, your fees, your type, and so on. But for the portal, I'll just go down here to bulk tasks and link contacts to portal users. Now, obviously, this here is a demo site, so it will look very different to what you have access to. But what you will notice that you will have majority of your portal users are matched based on email. So all you have to do is tick in bulk those ones that have a portal user matched here, and move on to the next step and confirm. For those parents or users that can't be matched, can't be found, you will need to go in here, for example, and just search for that parent name and assign it to the email address that's found in the parent portal. So you literally need to do a manual assignment or manual matching if you want of that. Don't spend a lot of time here on this, but make sure that you raise it with us in tomorrow's session in that full day if you have any questions. So this is also important as a bulk exercise to make sure that everybody can access the parent portal and especially the invoicing and the payments area. And the other aspect that we need to ensure here is to review the split billing percentages. So especially for those split families, we assign just the financially responsible person at 100% for a student, this financially responsible contact. But if there are any financially interested contacts that need to become responsible because they want to pay a certain percent, let's say it's a 50-50, or maybe it's grandma that pays 20% and the parents pay 40 and 40, that, and because they're split, that's also something you need to address, just to make sure that those members, those contacts, see only the 40% of the invoice they need to split, and they don't see each other's amounts. So how do we do that? Again, as you just a reminder, so the financially responsible comes from earn, and that's assigned 100%. But for split families only, you need to assign a percent, and that would be done here in the, we need to find, let's say, a particular student. Find a student. Trying to remember, I think the Bantin family has, so let's look at Laura. So for Laura, if I scroll down all the way here, I can see that this contact has a 20%, 40, and 40. So if you have 100%, all you have to do is to set up the contact and adjust the percent amount. So if you have just a financially responsible 100%, but you actually want to split the invoices, make sure the financially responsible parent is, or the contact is available in Earn. If it's not here, and then it will trickle overnight. Or if those financially responsible are here already, make sure you assign the correct percent. So again, that will need to be done, especially for those split families. So just a reminder, we covered all the 11 steps of our checklist. We've looked at the import summary. Don't spend more than just 5-10 minutes there. We reviewed the fee structure. We looked at the fee types as well as the discount and flags, especially if you do have discounts that are applied. Just remember that they are only applicable when you do a student billing run only. We've also set up the tills and the FPOS terminals, and perhaps those are the most important areas. Make sure you don't forget. It only takes a couple of minutes, because from tomorrow you will need to obviously take cash if you do so already, or take payments via the FPOS machines. We look at banking permissions, that where you assign who can mark certain batches as approved, who can close, who can assign an end of day summary, and so on. As well as we looked at different permissions and settings that have to do with the parent portal. And if you do have the portal, don't forget to create a bulk link of all the portal users based on their email address, as well as ensure that you review the split billing percentages for those split families. So I guess this completes all the steps of our process. You can actually go and start applying what you've learned in those 6 education sessions. If you are here live, we look forward to catching up with you for the Q&A session tomorrow. Just a reminder that the link that's been communicated to you and that you've used for today's session is the same link. It's going to be available and open from 10 to 4 p.m. And don't forget about all those resources we mentioned. And we look forward to catching up with you tomorrow. Just drop in if you have questions, and we'll be here to help you become more comfortable and start using the finance module. Thank you so much for your time. We'll stop the recording and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow for the Q&A session. You take care. Goodbye.